Thank you everyone to be here this afternoon. My name is Alizée Madrignac, so I'm a PhD student in LaMCoS. I will talk about tribology and machine learning today. First, what is tribology? So tribology is the science of friction, wear, and lubrication. Today, I will talk only about friction and a little bit wear, but we focus on friction. So friction is everywhere, in engineering, in contact mechanics, or in less scientific field like music, for example, a violin. It's a friction. So when we talked about friction today, we talked about two first body maintained in contact with a load and in relative displacement with a velocity v. The energy dissipate in the contact is called coefficient of friction, and it's the tangential force on the normal force. This quantitative coefficient is the more influence coefficient that we studied today. So this is our contact, our mechanics we studied today. So we want to study the global scale with extraction of tribological property and the local scale with the study of the morphological property of the third body. Our objective is to link these two scales and to understand what's happened when two bodies are in friction, are in contact. In the literature, we see different kind of studies. The first one is the evaluation of morphological property of wear particles and identification of wear mechanism. Another kind of study is the evaluation of the link between the morphology of third body particles and conditions of experimentations. In these two cases, the particles are studied individually and are extracted out of the contact. Third body trapped in the contact and other configurations like the agglomerate or the spatial distribution are not taken into account. So we want to study the third body in situ, in the production site, and try to correlate the morphological attributes of the particle and texture to tribological data, so to coefficient of friction. To do this, we have a procedure. We done experimental tests. After this test, we open the contact. It's the postmortem analysis. This analysis is composed of two steps: data processing and image acquisition. After we process the images and we extract more characteristics, and we will discuss the result today, and I will present you the different results we have done during this thesis work. This is a draw of the Python disk tribometer. This is This is a pine, so in contact, it's a punctual contact with the disk, in rotation with a velocity. We have a force sensor in red to measure tangential force in real time. And we have a 3-axis accelerometer to evaluate the vibration in the 3 directions. You have here 2 images of the outlet and the inlet of the contact when we done the experiment. This is the first steps of the postmortem analysis, so the data processing of tribological data. You have here the average coefficient of friction per lap. You can see on this plot the different states of life of the contact, the running in and the steady states. It's a global view of the contact lap during a test. At the right corner, you have 2 maps. These 2 maps correspond to the coefficient of evolution of coefficient of friction and the tangential acceleration. Horizontally, you have the radial position on the track, and vertically, the number of the lap. color corresponds to the variation of coefficient of friction, and the black box corresponds to the last slide, because when we open the contact, we see the third body of the configuration of the third body at the last slab. So when we see here the red striation, we can't extract information of these events. So if we have a striation of the last lab, okay, it's wonderful, we can access to this information. But if it's in the middle of the test, we can't have this information on the morphology of the third body. So we conduct different tests at different friction distance to have this information to acquire different configuration and information. The second part of the postmortem analysis is the acquisition of images. We acquire images at different scales and localization. You have here an example on the pine and on the disc. We have two types of third body. The third body trapped in the contact in yellow. It's a texture of third body. It's crushed, it's spread. And in pink, we have particle, ejection particle. And these two types of third body lead to two types of image analysis. For the pink third body, we done a particle analysis, and for the yellow, a texture analysis. To have the more information as possible, we want to cover the entire tracks, but if we want to do all SEM images, it's very long. It's not very easy to have the exact localization. So we choose to do an image at each 15 degrees. So we have 24 angular positions on the tracks on the disc, one each 15 degrees. And for the pin, we choose to take 9 pictures in the center of the image for the texture, and 12 for the particle ejection. So if we recap, we have 24 areas on disk. For each area, we have 3 images, 1 texture, 2 ejection images for the particle of each side of the tracks, and one for the texture in the center of the tracks. We have to process the different type of image. The first category of third body is the particle. So we have to segment the particle and detect them on the image to extract several information. So the different aspects of third body particle and their texture don't allow us to use the classical image processing techniques like thresholding. So we have create a tool with machine learning code in Python to do a segmentation of this image without interaction of the texture of the different particle or the interaction of the background of the disk, because we don't remove the particle from their support. I will don't develop this tool because it's not our subject today, but we have here the workflow of processing. We take image of particle like as a training image. Note that our tool use classification at the level of the pixel. So a pixel is labeled as belong to a particle or do not belong to a particle. So it's not like deep learning with a UNet tool or other. It's a classification of pixels. After training of in artificial network, we can put an image at the input of the code, extract several features, and the network propose a segmentation. The images are cleaned to remove small artifacts or particles on the border to avoid bias or misclassification. of a single particle, for example, and particles in the binary image are detected to be studied after. To analyze the other type of third body, the texture, we use very common tools, gray level co-occurrence matrix and its statistics. Co-occurrence matrix will this tool will count how many times a pair of pixels is found in the image at a given distance and angle. And we put this value in the matrix, and after we can treat this matrix to extract several properties. So we have segmented particles, we have a matrix, a co-occurrence matrix for texture. We can extract the different features. For the particle, so for the pink third body, we have here an example of a classical descriptor. We have size descriptor like area and perimeters, and shape descriptors like circularity and elongation. We have many other descriptors, but just here for the illustration, I gave you this fourth. And for the co-occurrence matrix, we can compute the statistics descriptor like means, standard deviation, kurtosis, etc. But we choose to use the second moment, like entropy in sense of information, entropy of Shannon, and contrast inertia, homogeneity, energy. You have here the different formula of this property. P represents the gray value of the pixel considered. When we compute all these descriptors, naively we want to see in the first instance the behavior of these characteristics with coefficient of friction. So we plot this in first. So for the pink third body, we don't see evident correlation between particle characteristics and friction. Here it's circularity for the stars and elongation for the point. But these results are not surprising because we don't know when particles are product and we don't know when they are ejected. So this work is ongoing. We are ongoing this work with another PhD student to see in situ when particles are ejected and with their characteristic, what we can conclude of this. So this project is in progress. For the texture, we chose at first the entropy because entropy can have an explication more, how can I say that, more intuitively, maybe. We don't see a correlation with coefficient of friction, but maybe an evolution with the friction distance. This can be explained by the evolution of the texture. When we are in the running phase, in a range, the texture is very smooth, and when we reach on steady states, the appearance of the texture is more rough. The third body has been spread and been crushed. That can explain the chaos on the image and the increase of the entropy. If we look at the other characteristics of gray co-occurrence matrix, like homogeneity and energy, this is not the same trend as than entropy, but we can see the different regime, what we are already seen during the data processing phase, the steady state in green and the renewing in orange and blue. So there is a correlation between coefficient of friction and the characteristic of the third body, not direct, but we see there is something with the distance, with the different regime. So we want to know if we can do a prediction of this coefficient of friction. So to do this, we turn us with machine learning, and more specifically with random forest. You can say why random forest? You have already used neural networks, so why this time random forest? We choose after many discussions this algorithm for two principal reasons. This algorithm has the ability to work on very small database with big dimensions, so with a lot of features. And this algorithm can also present the influence of different features. So when we want to understand friction and the particularity of third body to link the coefficient of friction is very interesting to us to have the efficient features to understand the phenomena. How does it work? So many estimators, here the estimators are a decision tree, propose a value, an estimation, and the output of the random forest is the average value of all estimators. For this work, we have done 5 databases and trained 5 random forests. For the presentation today, I will focus on the database composed of features of texture, so the features compute on the gray level co-occurrence matrix. The database is composed of 190 samples. Each sample has 7 features and 1 label. The label is the coefficient of friction associated to the position on the tracks. You have here the hyperparameters of the random forest associated to this database. So if you want to try the experience, we have here the tuning of the random forest. This is our first result with this performance. The performance with R square, it's just for illustrate because we don't have a linear regression. The orange line here, it's not linear regression, just an evaluation of the expected value. I focus on the measured coefficient of friction and prediction. So it's just to visualize where the error was made and see if we have an outlier or other information like this. So we have a little error on the train evaluation, and when we try to do a test on an unknown database, we have a big one error. These results are very promising, but we want to decrease this error. And for this, we have 2 tools. We can simplify the problem by removing some features, or we can try to recalibrate the random forest. If these 2 techniques don't decrease sufficiently the error, it's maybe because the texture database is not the most suitable to our study. So we have 4 other databases in our pocket, so we try with another. Today present this, but we have all tests to do in the future. So I talk about delayed features. To delete this feature, we can't do this blindly. We have to choose the descriptors, and the descriptors we have to see 2 approaches. The descriptor to do the prediction necessary for the random forest. They are not necessarily directly understandable. It's just for the random forest. And the descriptor that we need to understand the friction, something understandable for the physician, like shape. If I told you about perimeters or area, you see what I say, we understand. If I told you about metrics of Minkowski or coefficient of Fourier for the shape, it's maybe more difficult to interpret, but for the random forest, it's not a problem. She can make his kitchen with this, and no problem. So we have to keep in mind these two aspects when we want to interpret the phenomena and understand the friction. This problem of choice of descriptor in terms of machine learning is to compare the statistical result. In the left is the correlation matrix excuse me. It's a correlation matrix in shape of heat map. And on the right, it's the result proposed by the random forest to understand the implication of each descriptor in the process of regression. So the user, to evaluate the performance of different descriptors, have to compare the two aspects and to make the choice. If I want to remove a feature, which one it will removed, or if I want to keep it, it's because I want to understand the implication, or if I want to understand the shape of third body with this descriptor, for example. I'm not sure I'm very clear. Maybe some question after. So if I want to recap my approach, we have done many tribological tests under different configurations. To this experiment, our process are analyzed to extract a coefficient of friction of the last life of the experiment. We have done ACM images and treat and processed them to extract texture information and characteristic of third body. All these characteristics are necessary to feed a random forest, and the random forest propose a value of coefficient of friction associated to them. And in the future, we want to study the prediction as such. There is her accuracy, generalization ability, and we want to evaluate the feature, their influence, their relevance, to define the coefficient of friction. Thank you for your attention.